Hey friends, welcome. We're so glad that you have chosen to be part of our broadcast today. I am Scott Sullivan, Discipleship Catalyst at the Georgia Baptist Mission Board, and I am joined today by several special guests. And the topic that we're dealing with is church facilities. How are we going to use those to maximize gospel impact? What can we do to enhance, or if you're looking to build, just some words of wisdom? And we're joined by two guys that have done it, and our two consultants will be leading this discussion. So let me introduce to you George Thomason. He has written a book called Resuscitate: How to Breathe New Life into a Gasping Church. Highly recommend that. And George's got that out. Love for you guys to jump into that. Chris Sanchez, and I should say Dr. Thomason, and Dr. Chris Sanchez will also be on the panel today. Chris, we're glad that you're with us too, buddy. And of course, George is supposed to be retired, keep trying to retire, but he's so good, they keep pulling him out of retirement. So he is now campus development pastor at Christ Church in Flowery Branch. And there's just so much. People around that area, George, are grateful for what you're doing, that you tried to retire in the area, that they picked you up. And then Chris, man, down there with Robbie Foster, our convention president at Northside and Valdosta. I know that Robbie has mentioned before just how valuable your insight and your oversight with staff, with facilities, and just your mind for organization is. So thanks for bringing your expertise to the panel today as well. Also, we've got Kenneth Aycock. He is our Northeast consultant and just doing a fabulous job, as well as not just our consultant, Kenneth, you are in a local church there, and so grateful that you're doing some part-time consulting with us, and our Northeast is really benefiting from that. And then Matthew Gibbs. Matthew is our East Central consultant at Second Baptist in Warner Robins. And Matthew, we're grateful for you too, buddy, for what you do on our team, the wisdom that you bring. So this team really, we exist to strengthen churches by resourcing, inspiring, and creating disciple makers. So this topic is very important because what we do with the resources God's given us, and sometimes resources is money, sometimes it's the building, it's the facility. So this discussion is huge. And I know that there are hundreds of churches right now that are asking these questions that you guys are about to tackle. So Matthew, jump into our discussion for us, buddy.
Hey, thank you, Scott. And guys, just thank y'all for being here and being a part of this discussion. I know it's an interesting time. And when we talk about facilities, administration, sometimes that stuff that's behind the scenes that people don't necessarily, your normal church member may not know about or think about. But thank you guys for all you do and for making this a part. Let me just mention that we will be posting a blog out there for you on our Georgia Baptist website. And there's a blog post called, "Is it time for a facilities checkup?" So we hope that you'll just take a look at that, just some things for you to think about and questions, hard questions to ask. It's never too late to do that, and it's something you should be doing at least annually. So we've provided that for you. And I'm going to turn it over to Kenneth and let him ask the first question of our panelist guests today.
Thank you, Matthew. George, I'm going to ask you this first, and Chris, I want you to jump in as well. How can we use our facilities, or what are some of the ways that we can use our facilities as a ministry resource to point people towards the gospel?
What a great question. Thank you, Kenneth. It's an honor to be a part of this today. And I've only been a Georgia Baptist for about 3 years, but have been involved in this kind of thing for 40, I guess I'm going on 47, still kicking. But, it's obvious that things change through the years, and you have to give careful attention to opportunities for ministry, and facilities is a big part of that. As Scott said, one of the things that we do at our church that I think is really, really important, and it's not anything new, because I'm sure that lots of churches are taking advantage of this, but we have learned that if we can drive people to our connection room every Sunday, we have pastors and trained lay people in there to engage with folks, that we really have a good opportunity to get those people with the gospel. So what we do every week is drive them there. Now, before we moved into our new worship center, the connection room was right out the side doors of the worship center and to the right. I mean, it's very easy. Now it's even more convenient because we saw such a phenomenal impact with the connection room experience. We designed a large glass enclosed portion of our lobby as you first enter the worship center area that we call our connection room. And we set it up with relaxed furniture and there's a fireplace in there. I mean, it's really a neat spot. And we have it set up to really engage people in a comfortable setting so they kind of relax. And what we've found is when we bring them to that connection room, then one of the primary objective of our staff and lay people when they connect with folks in the connection room is to try to get them to sign up for our new member class, which we call Your Place. The name of the church is Christ Place Church, so we call it Your Place. And so we get them signed up right then if we can. I can't tell you the number of people we led to Jesus in that room. It's really been exciting, and they make new friends, all of that. They've got refreshments in there and that kind of thing. So I would say if there's any possible way in your facilities, you can create some type of connection room, call it whatever you want to. It would really be a help in your ministry. Not only that, I know this seems a little crazy, but we try to offer free coffee in the lobby too. And even though it's a new worship center and everything's fresh and just a couple of years old, we don't mind if they bring it in church. Our maintenance guy has a fit with it, but we do. I think that just is a nice thing. And every now and then we'll set up little stations for donuts, things like that. Whether you'd want to do this or not, I don't know. And you might have some convictions on it, but we have a little store in the lobby as well, where people can pick up, Christ Place shirts and hats and things like that. And Pastor writes a book every now and then. We got stuff like that in there. So, by the way, I hadn't been able to get them, Scott, put my book in there yet. But anyway, another critical thing related to facilities that I would throw out, and then I'll stop talking, is really the playground. Well, we spent a lot of money developing a really, really first-class playground right at the entrance of the worship center, over to one side, and it's backed up to the preschool building. So it's a perfect little nook there. And I know that it's kind of, not every church would want to do this because there may be some liability issues and so forth, but we open it up to the community too during the week. And we're just trying to provide a service, but it's really neat when those kids see that playground and so forth. It's really cool, and they want to be a part of it. Of course, the children's building, we've designed and decorated that to be a kind of a magnet for kids and all those things too. So that's just a thumbnail sketch, but those are a few things we found that really been helpful.
Thank you, George. Chris, what are your thoughts?
To piggyback off of what George said, and y'all, thank you for inviting me this morning to be a part of this. I'm honored that you thought of us down there in South Georgia. We get forgotten about sometimes down there. George had mentioned coffee in the sanctuary as an example and whatnot. Something that I try to make sure that my team understands is the only way we're going to keep that new sanctuary really pretty and pristine like it was when we moved into it Easter of 18 is to not use it and to not have people in there. And so the folks coming in with bringing their morning coffee in, or they've got kids in tow and they got their little snack things or whatever for the little ones that for whatever reason aren't going into the back. Don't worry about those things. Pews and carpet can be cleaned. The thing that those people need more than anything is they need to be somewhere where they can hear the gospel. And so that's the whole point of our facilities, to use those, to leverage those for an opportunity to have a gospel conversation with the people that God brings into our facilities each week.
That's excellent, guys. Thank you so much for that. Here's another question for you. Just want to start with Chris, and George, you can chime in there as well. Here's a question. How can a church effectively budget for their facility costs, both the expected costs as well as some unexpected costs? And I know, Chris, this is an area that you are specialized in what you do there. So could you give us a little insight there?
Well, the biggest thing, well, your normal operating expenses, your utilities, for example, if unless it's a brand new church or you've added a building or you've expanded, you've got some history on that. So leveraging that and looking at your trends, if you're growing, for example, or if something's happened in the community and maybe your church is down a little bit, and that impacts how we use our facilities. So a couple of years ago, we were going through a really, really fruitful time of ministry, and we added over 200 people to our church. Well, about midway through the year, I shared with my finance team that, water is going to be over that line item this year. And the question was, well, why? I'm like, well, every time we fill the baptistry up, it takes about 900 gallons.
Amen.
With all these new people coming in, they're using, restrooms are being used and stuff too. And I said, these are good problems to have, y'all. So if it runs a little bit over, it's okay. But that kind of stuff is pretty straightforward. We're all pretty good at kitchen table math for the most part. The thing that I try to share with folks that is most helpful is to standardize expenses that you can standardize. And what I mean by that is things like cleaning your carpets. Your carpets have to be cleaned regularly. And so at my church, we do that the week after Vacation Bible School in July and the week between Christmas and New Year, where those things have a minimal impact on the actual ministries taking place in the church. I have 48 HVAC units on my facility. I have those on a quarterly schedule for service. They're inspected once a quarter by a trained technician from our vendor. And in fact, we just had one, we found there's an oil leak of some sort. So there's $1,500 to fix that. I have kitchen equipment in our commercial kitchen serviced annually and inspected to make sure, because I've got one of those pieces of equipment is gas. That's a big deal, to make sure that the gas lines and everything are good. So the things that you can standardize, try to standardize those and incorporate that into the rhythm of your ministry of your church each year, each week, each quarter, annually. And that will smooth a lot of this, a lot of challenges that churches experience. It'll smooth those over.
George, you got anything to add there?
Excellent. I got some great ideas. Yeah, a couple things that I would throw in there. I've learned through the years that, and I was an executive pastor at a large church in Florida for a long time and had to kind of walk in your footsteps, Chris. So one of the things that I put in place was two primary contingencies in the budget. Mm-hmm. One was a personnel contingency and the other was operations contingency. As no matter how well you budget, always things come up that you just didn't think about. And that's really good because it means the Spirit of God's at work and you want to have some resources to be able to, address those things. So I think that's important. And let me tell you guys, it was very difficult to get this next thing done, but I was bulldog stubborn and finally got it implemented. The previous guy in my position, what he would do in terms of reserves was he'd wait till the end of the year and see what was there. And then whatever those dollars were, if there were some dollars left, he'd put that in reserve and try to build up over time. That is not a good way to handle your budget in terms of reserves. So we budgeted for reserves and put money in there, a 12th every month. Even the first campus that we started down there in Florida, I knew we inherited an old building and it had old HVAC Chris, units all over it, and it wasn't real large, but one of those can be $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 even in a small building. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to make sure that we didn't create any problems for the central campus. So from day one, we started a reserve account and started putting money in that reserve account. And it was that was the only way I was able back at the central campus to get them to do it, because they saw we never were asking them for money. we had money in the account to take care of things that came up we didn't anticipate. So I think any way you can put some contingencies and some reserves in there. And by the way, if your church has a heart for multiplication and you're thinking church planting or multi-site, you might want to do one more thing, and that is to put another contingency item in, a seed fund for new campuses or church planting. Because you never know when God's going to open up that door and it's time to step through it. And it sure is great if you got some resources for startup funds. Just some thoughts.
Those are some great thoughts, George. And we'd love to hear from the people that are logged on and watching this. If you just take a moment, make a comment, talk about some of your experience with working with facilities at your church. We'd love to hear from you in this group. That's what we're here for. Also, as we think about this next question, Chris, I want you to also think about maybe that single staff pastor that's working and evaluating facilities, or a church, a smaller church. But what advice would you give to pastors, that single staff pastor or church staff, as they make an annual evaluation plan for their church facilities? What are some things they should be looking for? And maybe they've never thought about doing an annual evaluation. But you talk about the importance of that. And Chris, I ask you that first, and then George, if you'll jump in.
Thank you, Ken. The things that immediately come to mind: how old, equipment-wise, how old are the heating and air units on your facility? I have a large facility. One of the year before last, I replaced the oldest unit that we had in service. It was put into service in 1987. Wow. I've got about 20 units currently on my facility that were put into service during the 1990s. So I know that I've got some expenses coming up. I have 2 units on a flat roof that have to be replaced this year. But before it gets cold, I can't run the heat on them right now. The air conditioning part runs fine, but we caught that doing an annual evaluation, having folks come out and look, and that was a matter of having a vendor come out and checking things. For the facilities themselves, especially for a smaller church with limited staff or single staff, if you can, the people that are using the facilities to do ministries in your church, have them participate in that some kind of way. They see the whoever's leading your children's ministry, for example, or your student ministry, they see your facilities through eyes completely different than through my eyes. They're not thinking about that unit over there. Hey, there's a funny color in the, on that. What is that? Whereas I'm thinking, okay, something's leaking there. They never see that. Is the room that I'm using tonight and going to have 30 kids in, or 13 kids, or however many, is it cool? Especially here in South Georgia, we think a lot about the air conditioners working. So if you can, get those people that use the facilities for ministry to walk through that and try to see your facilities through those eyes. The things that you think might need to be done, they probably need to be done, but maybe they need to be done in a different way than what I'm thinking, because I'm not in there doing student ministry or doing children's ministry or whatnot week in, week out like they are.
Yeah. Those are all great points. Thank you for sharing that. George, will you have any insight in that?
Last week, we went to visit a lady on the other side of Lake Lanier. And when we walked up to her front porch, she had 2 coach lamps on either side. And we noticed 2 things. To get to the porch, we had to dodge some shrubbery that hadn't been trimmed. And up over one of the coach lights was a bird nest that had been built. And there were cobwebs everywhere. She doesn't even see that. because she, probably because she comes in through the garage. But we have blind spots about our facilities at church.
Mm.
And I think it's really important. I think Chris has a great idea to have those people that work in those areas to do it. But one of the things I've always done is I found one lady when I was a pastor. You talk about a single pastor. I mean, I've been in every size church there is over these years. And when I was a single staff guy, I found one lady who was absolutely OCD to the max. I wanted everything perfect. If you look in her cabinets, you'd see that the labels of all the cans were facing you properly. I mean, it's that bad. I got her, and I would have her every 3 months to walk the facility with me. And I'd have a pad of paper, and I'd write down, and I would do whatever she said to do because she wanted it to look perfect. And by the way, God's place ought to be the best it can be. So we try to do that, not annually, but quarterly, because things happen fast. And we would walk through every room. She would see hymnals and literature and stuff all piled up. It shouldn't be there. And obviously we'd work with the workers in there. We wouldn't just clean out their mess, but I put the pressure on her instead of me. She encouraged them to make adjustments in the facility. And then, of course, we're all familiar probably with the Golden Gate principle, where they start at one end of the Golden Gate and start painting. When they get to the other end, they start over again. They just, so that you keep it looking nice all the time. I think that would be a good annual thing, is have those rhythms, as Chris said, built in to your maintenance schedule and really make it look nice. It ought to look nice.
Thank you, guys. That's all. That stuff is great. I appreciate all that you've given. It's important for us to understand that these principles. A lot of these principles apply no matter the size of the church, and there's ways, whether you have significant budget limitations or you have a little more freedom with your budget, to make sure that these things are taken care of. Was reading an article. Our facilities are some of the most expensive resources that we have, and we need to do the best we can to take care of those. And they're also the launch pad for sharing the gospel with our community and with the people that enter the door. So kind of as we close this out, any final words that either of you have? George, why don't you start for us?
Okay. I always have some final words. You can tell that. When we started our first campus down in Florida, in addition to our central campus, I had a deep conviction I wanted to try something. One of the most expensive things that we have in our budget is personnel, salaries and so forth, benefits. And I know this doesn't relate to facilities, but it will free up money for facilities. And so I had a conviction that I was going to try to have half of my staff paid. Now, I started with just me and a 20-hour-a-week secretary, okay? But I had big visions. And so I wanted to have half of my staff paid, maybe part-time or full-time, and half of them total volunteers. But I wanted to expect just as much of the volunteers as I did the paid people. They would come to all the staff meetings and be engaged in the decisions, et cetera, et cetera. And so I started doing that. Gosh, what a difference it made. We were able to keep our budget very, very manageable, and yet we did so much more with less. So in that case, less was more, and it made a big difference for us. And it dawned on me, gosh, we got other volunteers that we can use instead of paying people all the time. So we had building and grounds people. We had, in fact, our guy that followed, that directed all the work around the facilities was a volunteer, highly paid, big time businessman, but he had a heart for that. And so he directed all that, and he got volunteers to work. And they just did a phenomenal job. I can't tell you how much money we saved working on the grounds and so forth by just using volunteers. So don't forget that. People love doing that, but you got to have somebody that can really direct them well and keep them focused and get the materials they need.
That's good.
Chris, what about you? Any final words?
Well, I'm like George. I've always got some final words. I guess what I would leave you with, Matthew, is to encourage folks to plan for the unexpected. Plan on God to move in and through your church. Plan on the devil trying to hinder that movement, and know that if you have an air conditioning unit go out in the middle of the summer months, pretty much anywhere in the state of Georgia, you're going to replace it. But planning for things like that, that doesn't need to be a distraction from what God's called you to do. Your facilities should enhance what you're doing, the ministry that you're doing. They shouldn't detract from it. So yeah, they should look great, as great as we can make them look. Things should be well maintained. I tell my team when my group is doing our job best, folks don't even realize that we're there and have no idea what it is we do. And so, although right now during this coronavirus time, folks smelling some sanitizer when they walk in the building and kind of getting that, that's not a bad thing. So, but plan for the unexpected and watch God move in and through your ministry, and He'll bless that.
Hey Chris,
Yes, sir.
You sparked a thought for me. When we built our last facilities, we decided, because of the air conditioning, it was in South Florida, which is even worse than South Georgia in terms of needing air conditioning. We designed into our HVA system redundancy, so that if we lost a unit, nobody knew the difference. Mm-hmm. What I mean is, we put some of those, what do you call those units? Those Mitsubishi units, the mini splits. Mini splits, yeah. We put some extra mini splits in that we didn't even need most of the time. But if we lost a big unit, we could kick those babies in and nobody knew the difference. So we built a little redundancy into the building to start with. If that's a problem, you got old units, it might be something you could consider. Just a thought.
Sure. That's a good thought.
Guys, thank you so much for being here today. Kenneth, Chris, George, appreciate your insight. And again, your wisdom in this area, and just the ministries that you're involved in now, both in Valdosta there and also in Christ Place. Scott, I'm gonna turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much. I've just been sitting here the whole time writing notes. And Chris and George, when I grow up, I want to be just like the two of you. There's a word, I'll close out with this. There's a word that is kind of weaved in and out of this whole discussion and its culture. And those who are following our discipleship team hear us say a lot, that language leads culture, but that there's a second piece of that our facilities stir people's affections for the Lord. Yes. And we want that. When people walk in with a young child and they see that you cared enough to create a fabulous children's area, or your wife goes to the bathroom and she sees that you cared enough to have a fabulous bathroom for our ladies. Those things communicate and it stirs their affections. And here's the deal. If God leads them to another church, praise God. We don't want them at our church if he's leading them somewhere else. But if he was leading them to our church, but we didn't care for them, shame on us. Yeah. So this discussion of facilities is absolutely critical. So guys, thank you so much for helping us to talk through this. And man, I just remember coming out of 29 years, local church, working on facilities, half that time being in a single staff church with part-time folks trying to figure all this out. And I remember we used to do that. I think, George, you mentioned this annually. We would go through, as a matter of fact, twice. We'd do it in right before Christmas, and we'd do it right before Easter, the big days at church. And then we'd gather those volunteers and we would walk through every room in the church. We'd walk through the outside, we'd walk through the playground, and we would just make a note of everything that needed to be updated. And then we had volunteers all over the church cleaning it up. And we called it companies coming. Because that's what we do, right? When companies come into the house, we clean up all the junk that we normally don't care about. Well, I think for us, a regular idea of, listen, companies coming, get this thing in check. So guys, thanks so much. Ray Sullivan, you're awesome. He's our show producer today. He's behind the scenes, making sure that things happen. Matthew and Kenneth, thank you, consultants, for creating this, getting these guys on the panel. And then George and Chris, you guys are awesome. And we appreciate you being so willing to jump on and help as we try to resource leaders and pastors in Georgia. And we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.